Sophie Cunningham was flat out targeted by a dirty player. Can continue to survive these things. Here you see Sophie Cunningham laid out on the floor, holding her knee. The lady was in tears, crying as Lexi Hull approached her to help her.
Immediately, first, look at this. Instantly into the game. Instantly. Immediately. They had a target to hurt Sophie. She was targeted by this team.
Sophie Cunningham lay on the hardwood, clutching her knee in tears, and the arena went silent. But this wasn't some freak accident. Fans and her own family are convinced she was targeted, crushed in broad daylight by the league's dirtiest player. Bria Hartley's name is now being dragged through every corner of the basketball world, accused of going out of her way to ruin careers. And the most shocking part is not the injury itself, it's the silence from the WNBA, a league that seems more interested in policing tweets than protecting its stars.
Right there, and Hartley just kind of falls
and
in
she
crushes
in
immediately
on the knee of Sophie right here.
She went.
What really happened to Sophie Cunningham, and why does it feel like the league is spiraling out of control? Like, subscribe, and comment if this proves the WNBA has completely failed to protect its own athletes, because the story of Sophie's collapse is only the beginning.
Just sums up everything. Like, we weren't going to win this game if Sophie Cunningham was healthy. This isn't like, oh, we lost because of a Sophie Cunningham injury. We were down 17 points when she got injured. This happens.
The moment Sophie Cunningham hit the floor, it didn't look like a normal play. The replay showed Bria Hartley charging in, colliding directly with Sophie's leg, and the sound of her scream cut through the arena. Teammates rushed in. Lexi Hull knelt beside her, but the damage was already clear. Sophie clutched her knee with both hands, tears streaming down her face as her family watched helplessly from the stands. In that instant, a game turned into something darker, something that felt intentional.
And it looked like Stephanie White is extremely emotional after this hard-fought game. Sophie Cunningham family is
The Fever were already trailing by 17, their season already crumbling. And then their toughest competitor, the one who brought fight when no one else would, was suddenly erased. Fans didn't see a stumble or unlucky twist. They saw Hartley's body crash into Sophie's knee like a wrecking ball, and it confirmed what many feared. This wasn't bad luck. This was a hit job. The arena was stunned into silence, but social media exploded within minutes, branding Hartley a repeat offender. And the most haunting part? Everyone watching felt a chilling sense of déjà vu, as if the nightmare that sidelined Caitlin Clark was happening all over again.
I'm hella mad. Hartley need to be suspended on a major level completely. Probably at this point,
By the time Sophie Cunningham went down, the scoreboard was already ugly. The Fever trailed by 17 points, looking lifeless, careless, and beaten before the injury even happened. For fans, it felt like a twisted pattern. Every week, a new disaster, a new reason to call this stretch the season from hell. The losses piled up, the roster kept breaking, and the franchise somehow invented brand new ways to embarrass itself.
They wanted to hurt Sophie. They made it their business to hurt Sophie, and that's exactly what they did, was hurt Sophie, and I'm hella mad.
Commentators compared it less to basketball and more to a demolition derby, where surviving the night mattered more than winning. The joke stopped being funny once Sophie crumpled to the floor, because her injury didn't feel like a random setback. It felt like the perfect exclamation point on a cursed campaign. The team's only spark of toughness had been snuffed out, and fans knew deep down this was more than bad luck.
Mom Paula, at WNBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game, protect your athlete.
The way Hartley crashed into Sophie left no room for comfort, only anger. And anger turned into outrage when family members went public, blasting the league for letting its stars be hunted without consequences. The real question wasn't whether the Fever could win another game. The question was whether they could even finish the season standing. The instant Sophie's knee buckled, whispers turned into accusations. Fans weren't buying the idea of an accident, and neither was her family.
Sophie's mother, Paula, Hartley is a disgruntled player having trouble everywhere she goes.
Her sister Lindsay and her mother Paula went straight online, tearing into the WNBA with blistering posts that spread like wildfire. They demanded to know why officials cared more about fining players for post-game comments than protecting athletes from repeat offenders. Paula didn't hold back, calling Hartley mean-spirited and reckless, while Lindsay accused the league of standing by as stars were hunted out of the game. The backlash only grew as fans flooded social media with clips of the play, circling Hartley's collision frame by frame and calling it deliberate.
Sophie did not deserve any of that happened to her today.
The narrative wasn't of bad luck, it was of a setup. A target placed directly on Sophie's back from the moment she checked in. And when you remember this wasn't her first injury of the year, both times coming against the same team, the word coincidence stopped carrying weight. It began to look like a pattern too blatant to ignore. But if Sophie's injury lit the fire, Hartley's reputation poured gasoline on it, because fans already knew this wasn't her first dirty moment.
I told you guys this girl was a dirty player, and that's all she did today was show how dirty she is. This is unfortunate.
Bria Hartley's name was already poison in the eyes of fans long before Sophie Cunningham's collapse. Her track record reads less like a stat sheet and more like a rap sheet. Earlier this season, she yanked Angel Reese down by her ponytail in a move that looked more like pro wrestling than professional basketball.
She is a dirty, dirty player. She pulled Angel Reese out of air by her ponytail. Angel Reese is ready to fight.
Days later, she grabbed Becca Allen by the head and slammed her to the floor. Those weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a long string of reckless plays, ejections, and cheap shots that earned her the label of the dirtiest player in the league. Broadcasters now speak her name in the same breath as Dejounte Carrington, a player already infamous for dangerous fouls. Critics go further, saying Hartley doesn't simply play aggressively, but actively seeks to end careers.
It's a patella injury. Normally, people will hold higher in their knee if it's a knee ligament injury. It looks like she might have either broke.
I don't know if it's her knee. I don't know if it's her Achilles, the way she was kind of dragging her foot. I don't know. But Bria Hartley has had dirty plays all season. You got to know who we're talking about.
So when Sophie crumpled after direct contact with her, fans weren't shocked. They were furious. The anger wasn't just at Hartley, though. It shifted upward, toward the league itself, for letting a player with that reputation keep suiting up week after week.
In the beginning of this game, Sophie Cunningham is bringing the ball up the floor. She gets mugged, hit upside the head, knocked to the floor while dribbling the ball up the floor 75 feet away from the rim.
Because if Hartley was a villain, the WNBA was accused of being her accomplice, and that's when the conversation took an even darker turn. The real outrage didn't stop with Hartley's hit. It exploded when fans realized the league's response was silence. No suspension, no public warning, no accountability for a player whose reputation was already in question. Instead, the WNBA appeared more concerned with policing comments from athletes than protecting them on the court.
Do you think the refs called any fouls? No, they didn't. These refs are clowns.
Critics said the officials looked lost, calling games like a pickup run at the YMCA, while stars dropped left and right under their watch. The frustration reached a breaking point when calls for an actual civil rights investigation into officiating culture started circulating online. Think about that. An investigation into a professional sports league because fans believed the referees weren't enforcing even the most basic standards of safety.
Because she is somebody's daughter, she is somebody's sister, and this is just unfortunate. And those of you who don't think a civil rights investigation need to be brought upon this league is tripping.
Family members and analysts called the officials clowns, blasting them for letting dangerous plays happen without consequence. For supporters of Sophie and Caitlin Clark, this was more than bad officiating. It was negligence. And that negligence was leaving the league's biggest stars in tears, sidelined, and possibly out for the season. But Sophie's absence wasn't the only shadow haunting the Fever. There was an even bigger question hanging over everything.
Sophie Cunningham out for the year. How can this team continue to survive? We bring in Ari McDonald because of injuries. And who would have thought? Caitlin Clark would be out most of the year.
Where was Caitlin Clark? Sophie Cunningham's injury didn't happen in a vacuum. It landed on top of a season already gutted by Caitlin Clark's absence. The WNBA's most hyped rookie, the player plastered on billboards and paraded as the savior of the league, has missed more than 75% of the year. Analysts count only a dozen or so games where Clark has even been on the floor, leaving the league without its biggest draw. For Indiana, her absence left Sophie as the only real spark of toughness and energy in the rotation, the one player who hyped up teammates when others stood silent. Losing both stars in the same stretch wasn't a coincidence. It felt like the season itself was cursed. Even Stephanie White's optimism rang hollow as she hinted at Clark's possible return, because fans had already lost faith. Would Clark risk stepping back into a league that refused to protect its own athletes? Would she put her career on the line for a team branded as a season from hell? These weren't just hypotheticals. They were questions haunting the Fever's locker room and the league's reputation at the same time. And the answers would decide whether the WNBA climbs out of chaos or falls off the cliff entirely. The Indiana Fever's season now hangs by a single thread, and that thread looks ready to snap. Sophie Cunningham is gone. Caitlin Clark has barely played, and the team's so-called leadership looks powerless to stop the bleeding. What should have been the league's most promising storyline has turned into a cautionary tale of injuries, officiating chaos, and stars being left unprotected. Fans aren't simply frustrated, They feel betrayed, convinced the WNBA values image and headlines more than the safety of the athletes who carry the game. And the numbers don't lie. With every injury, with every controversial no call, trust in the league is fading. This isn't about one bad game or one unlucky collision. This is about a culture that lets dirty plays slide until another star is lying on the floor in tears. Now the only question left is whether Caitlin Clark will risk her own career to step back onto the court for a franchise drowning in disaster, or if she decides to let the league answer for the wreckage it created. Like, subscribe, and comment if this proves the WNBA has completely failed its players, because Sophie Cunningham's collapse might be remembered not as an accident, but as the moment the league itself lost all credibility.